Hey y'all, my name is Maya. I'm a 25-year-old sharing pieces of my Romans 8:28 life here on the internet. And I also like to read. My grandfather, who passed away in 2024, actually taught me how to read when I was like 3 or 4 years old. And ever since then, I've been in love. Elementary, middle, high school, y'all, all I used to do was read. When I got to college, I stopped reading for leisure just because I was reading for school, for grades. So it was like, baby, who wants to read? I graduated college in 2021, and in 2022, I got back into my love for reading, and in 2024 I started making book content. Now, I did not do the best job, but it's a new year and I'm getting back into it. My goal for 2024 was to read 20 books. I did not meet that goal. I read 11 books, but it's okay. I'm proud of myself because in 2023 I only read 6 books, so last year I almost doubled that. And again, it's a new year. My goal again for this year is 20 books, and I'm believing that I'm gonna reach that this year. That's only 2 books a month. Like, I can do that. As y'all can tell by the title, I'm actually gonna be sharing the 11 books that I read in 2024, and I'm super excited because I feel like I read some really good books last year, and I'm excited to talk all about them, to share them with y'all. If you've been looking for some book recs, maybe this will help you out. I have my stack right here. Now, this is not 11 books. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I'm missing 2, but one of the books I believe I gave away, and the other book was a library book, so I returned that one. So we have our 9 out of 11 here. I actually need to get my reading journal to help jog my memory, so 1 second. I got my handy dandy reading journal, and we're gonna get into it. I also want to mention this really quickly because I feel like it kind of makes a little sense here. Maybe it doesn't, but I'm gonna insert it anyway. But in 2024 I also finished reading the entire Bible, and that was a 3-year journey, and it really blessed me, and I'm so grateful that I took on that journey. It's crazy because I can see how the Lord has grown me in those 3 years and how I've matured some. And although I grew up Christian, reading the Bible myself and studying the word for myself for the first time in its entirety, it was sort of like I was hearing everything for the first time, because it was just like, oh, now I get it, now I see. So yeah, I mean, I read the Bible and I finished it in 2024, and so I just wanted to like mention that really quickly, and also encourage anyone else, especially, you know, young adults. You can read the entire Bible. It is possible, and it don't even have to take 3 years. It just took me 3 years. Now let's get into the 11 books that I read in 2024. First up was Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. I'm pretty sure this would be considered historical fiction, and it tells the story of, what's his name? Oh my gosh, I should have maybe prepared a little more for this. Sorry guys. Ted Bundy, that's his name. Okay, it follows the main character, Pamela, and she is a college student at Florida State, and so it's from her perspective, following the, I'm trying to like tell this off the top of my head, and I'm like, okay, how do I work this? Okay, essentially Pamela is a college student at Florida State. She is a part of a sorority at Florida State, and she is there the night that a serial killer comes into her sorority house and, oh, I'm sorry, I can't say that, and unalives, I think, 2 of her sorority sisters, and it's based off the very real accounts or events of serial unaliver Ted Bundy. Okay, although I watched the documentary and the movie, reading this book was still very interesting because it was told from a different POV, and so it was like, it felt like I didn't know anything about Ted Bundy or about this night at Florida State. One thing I also like about this book and her writing is that she did not want to mention Ted Bundy in the book. She did not once say his name in the book because she really wanted to take the focus off of him. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. I don't have any notes on it in my reading journal, but on Goodreads I wrote, I enjoyed this read overall. The ending had me a little confused though. Yes, the ending of this book had me a little confused, and maybe I need to go back and reread it, but I was a little like, wait, what just happened? Like, I kind of know what just happened, but I don't really know what just happened. Maybe it was just me, I don't know. But overall, pretty good read. My next book is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Ashley P, that's what we're gonna call her, Ashley P. A lot of people were talking talking about this on TikTok, and to be honest with y'all, I don't read a lot of books that are necessarily popular online at the time. I kind of actually like to stray away from books that are super popular online, but I did want to read this. This was my introduction to adult romance, or would it be? I don't know if I read romance in 2023, but in 2024, this was my first romance read. I read this in January of last year, but you know, February, Valentine's Day was coming up, so I was like, I want a little romance, and I don't have a lot of experience with romance reads, so I wanted something that I felt like I would enjoy. This follows Clementine. I believe she's living in New York in an apartment that used to be her aunt's apartment, and when she was growing up, her aunt would always tell her, oh, this apartment is a magical place. Her aunt passed away and she moved into the apartment, and so to her, you know, she's like, oh, well, that's fairy tales. There's nothing special about this apartment. When she moves in, she finds a stranger in the kitchen. She starts to fall for him or whatever, but he lives 7 years in the past. So essentially, the apartment that Clementine lives in is like a wormhole, and in the apartment, she can go 7 years in the past. But the male character that she has fallen for, when he's in the apartment, he goes 7 years in the future. There starts to be some issues with that. This was my introduction to magical realism in my adult reading life. I'm not too much into magic or anything like that. I'm good on it actually. But this book was just like, it was magical realism, but in a very cutesy kind of way. It did not explain how the apartment was a wormhole or anything like that. It was just sort of like, yeah, the apartment, you go 7 years in the past or 7 years in the future. It is what it is. And I appreciated that because I don't need to know how all of that works. Like, I'm not here for that. I'm here for the romance. I rated this 4 out of 5 stars, and on Goodreads I wrote my first adult romance read, and I really enjoyed it. Loved the way that it was written and how the story unfolded. Great intro to romance for me. I don't care for spice, so if I'm reading a romance book and it gets spicy, I will, you know, skip over that. If I remember correctly, this did have like 2 or so spice scenes, but they weren't crazy. You know, if you're not a spice fan either, there is a little bit of spice in this one. Next book is Let Us Descend by Jasmine Ward. Jasmine Ward, y'all, is an auto-buy author for me. I literally love her. In college, I read a book by her. I do not remember the name of the book, but I'll put it on the screen. But it was her like memoir. I was just in love with her writing. I actually also had to write a paper on that book, and my professor gave me an A. So of course, like, that made me that helped me like the book even more. But ever since then, I just really have been in love with her as an author. So this is the 3rd book that I read by her. Men We Reap follows an enslaved girl, her journey from the Carolinas to New Orleans to work on a sugar plantation. Her name is Annis. I'm gonna lead into this by saying I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars. I did not really enjoy this book, y'all. So as Annis is on the way from the Carolinas to New Orleans, she is like thinking of her mom and her grandmother to comfort her, to give her strength on the journey, and to also find comfort through all of this. She turned to spirits, and there was one spirit in particular. There was parts of this that I was like, this is a little demonic. Like, yeah, some of this, y'all, is kind of like, I don't feel comfortable reading this. I'm actually gonna skip over that. I know that somebody's gonna be like, oh, you know, it's our history. I don't care about none of that. Leave it in the past. That was such a part of the book that, like, I just really couldn't enjoy it. It's kind of unfortunate because, like I said, Jasmine Ward, love her. This book was also in Oprah's book club pick in 2023, but this book just wasn't for me. The next book I read was Rules of Engagement by Selena Montgomery, or Stacey Abrams. I have notes on this in my reading journal, finally. Quick synopsis though. This story follows Dr. Raleigh. She is like a secret agent. She's assigned with a partner. His name is Adam. If I remember correctly, they had like previously had some type of little thing, and then they're assigned on this assignment together. And so they're like, you know, trying to act like they don't like each other, they hate each other, because they both feel like the other one did something shady on a previous assignment. So like they like hate each other now and kind of don't trust each other, but they're fighting these feelings and emotions while they're on, you know, this new dangerous assignment. As Adam and Raleigh untangle a twisted web of secrets and lies, the tension mounts between them until their masquerade as a couple proves too tempting to resist. I found this book at a Books A Million, and I did not even know that Stacey Abrams was a fiction writer. So when I found it, I was like, oh wait, that's super cool. Y'all, I gave this book a 1 out of 5 stars. So looking at some of my notes, I wrote, sometimes I get lost while reading the dialogue. Yes, sometimes I would not know who was speaking and like who was saying what. That was so confusing trying to keep up with that. I would literally have to like reread and go back and like count the sentences to see, okay, who said this, who said that. That was very confusing. I did not know a lot of the words in this book, which is cool to a certain extent. Like, obviously I want to be educated. Sorry, I'm changing positions a little. I want to be educated and I want to learn something, but I can't even really fully enjoy the book because every other word I'm stopping on my phone to Google and just like look up the definition of this word. And at a certain point for me, y'all, it's like, I don't even need to know what that means. I also wrote that this book focused on a lot of different POVs, not just Adam and Raleigh's, and I didn't like that because that also was confusing and hard to follow along with. Oh, I wrote that I like that there isn't much cussing in this book. I don't like to read books with a whole bunch of cussing, so that was nice. I think that I felt like this book was boring up until a certain point, page 184. So I was 184 pages in before I felt like some action happened. So 1 out of 5 for me. My next book was While We Were Dating by Jasmine Guillory. This was my second romance read of 2024. I also picked this book up in Books A Million. My boyfriend actually picked this book for me. He had picked this book and Rules of Engagement out for me. I have a YouTube video where we went to Books A Million and got these books. I had never heard of Jasmine Guillory before picking this up, but now I'm privy to her and I would like to read more by her. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. While We Were Dating follows Anna, and Anna is an actress and she meets Ben. Anna is on a mission to make herself a household name. This ad campaign will be a great distraction while she waits to hear if she's booked her next movie. However, she didn't expect Ben Stephens to be her biggest distraction. If I remember correctly, Anna had some mental health things going on, and then Ben had like some family things going on, so they're trying to like figure that out as well. So with this book, I liked that the storyline progressed fairly quickly, and not in the sense of like, oh, their romance just progressed quickly, but I like that Ben and Anna met pretty early on in the book. It didn't leave you just waiting and waiting and waiting. Yeah, it kind of got right to it. With this book and with Anna, it talked a lot about just her size, and she was a little bit of like a thicker woman, and so I imagine Anna to look like Amber Riley. I wrote that I felt like I could relate to both Ben and Anna, and that made the reading experience more enjoyable. This book did get spicy. While We Were Dating was open door. We was all in their business, and I said, skip, I won't be reading that. Overall, this was a really fun, light-hearted, airy read. This book like had me smiling, and I love that for me. So yeah, this dealt with topics of mental health, anxiety, men opening up or being vulnerable, which I think is very important. You know, just in the Black community, Black men a lot of times are just more reserved and don't really open up, so I thought that was really good. But yes, I really enjoyed While We Were Dating. My next book was All Her Little Secrets by Wanda M. Morris. This was the third book that I picked up actually at Books A Million. Hold on, I need a little water break. I also had never heard of Wanda M. Morris, but she is an author that I have added to the list of authors that I will be reading more of their books. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. This book follows Elise, who is a corporate attorney living in Atlanta. I went to school in Atlanta, and I have been living in Metro Atlanta for a few years, so I love books, y'all, where the location is Atlanta. But yeah, she's living in Atlanta. She has great friends and a for fun relationship with a rich, charming executive who just happens to be her white boss. But everything changes one cold January morning when Elise arrives in the executive suite and finds him unalived with a wound to his head. And then she walks away like nothing has happened. Why? Elise has been keeping a dark secret, including a small town past and a kid brother who spent time on the other side of the law. She can't be thrust into the spotlight again. I'm gonna just stop there, y'all. This was so good. And this book started off with an African proverb, and I love when a book start off with a good quote. Something about it just do something to me. Like when a book start off with a good quote, I'll be like, this book is finna eat. I just know it. But this proverb is, when elephants fight, the only thing that suffers is the grass. And I thought that was so good. I had never heard that proverb before, and definitely tied into this book very well. I loved Wanda's writing style. And then, like I said, Elise, she's living in Atlanta, but she's actually from a small town in Georgia. I'm a Georgia girl, so I appreciated that as well. I feel like I could relate to her and relate to the book on that level. This book hit on what it's like to be Black and to be in corporate America, which I also can relate to, and so I just appreciated that as well. This book dealt with topics of being Black and poor in the South, sexual assault, so a little bit of trigger warning there, abortion, racism, abuse. There were a lot of hard topics in this book, and reading some of it made my stomach turn, but it made it more real and also made the book more beautiful. Definitely will be reading more by Miss Wanda. Y'all, I kind of have to hurry up because I only have 24 minutes on my camera and I gotta go to church. So let's keep this thing right on moving. The next is The House of Eve by Sadiqa Johnson. 5 out of 5. I want this to be a movie. I want this to be like a Netflix original or something. I loved this book, y'all. This is a historical fiction, and this book right here is the book that really solidified my love for historical fiction. I actually really love history. Like in real life, I love history, especially Black history. And so this book right here was just so good. Oh my gosh, it was so good. This followed two point of views. One's perspective being Ruby. She's a 15-year-old on track to becoming the first in her family to attend college, in spite of having a mother more interested in keeping a man than raising a daughter. But a taboo love affair threatens to pull her back down into poverty and desperation that has been passed on to her like a birthright. The other perspective is from Eleanor. She is in Washington DC at Howard. Okay, you know, we got HBCU trope, love that. And at Howard she meets William, who she falls in love with, and they end up marrying. William's family is like rich and they're all also light-skinned. Eleanor's family is not rich, and I believe she also is not light-skinned. So there's a little bit of like colorism in this book, and this also is based in like, it's based in the 50s. Colorism is still very real today, but I guess I would say it was maybe more overt back then. So this book actually started with a Toni Morrison quote, so let me go back to that. Each story has a monster in it who made them tough instead of brave, so they open their legs rather than their hearts with a folded childish tongue. Didn't I tell y'all I love when a book start with a good quote? And didn't I tell y'all that mean that 9 times out of 10 the author's finna cook? Yeah, it's Sadiqa cooked. She cooked. Oh my gosh, she cooked. This book made me smile and laugh some, not even intentionally. Like, it's not like, I don't feel like Sadiqa was trying to intentionally be funny, but I love books by Black authors because being Black, there's just certain things we say, certain things we do, and reading that sometimes, like you hear it all the time in life, but when you read it, sometimes it just be funny, and I love that. Oh my gosh, my camera fell, y'all. I really like this book also because it switched between Ruby and Eleanor's POVs, and their lives are sort of like almost completely opposite, and so it's just interesting to see how different people's lives can be, and also interesting to see that although people can have different lives and like come from different backgrounds, like our lives can still cross paths somehow. And that's what happened in this book, and Sadiqa did it in a very well way. I feel like if you have not read this, you need to read it. This is a Reese's book club pick, and I definitely want to read more by Sadiqa. I know that she has The Yellow Wife. I've heard that one is a little hard to read, but I do want to read it because yeah, sis is a writer. My next book is Summer Fridays by Suzanne Rendell. I don't have a copy of that book because I actually got that book from the library, and of course I had to return it. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. This is another romance read. I picked up this book because the title really caught my attention. Literally, Summer Fridays, a lip gloss. I don't have my lip gloss right here with me, but y'all know the girls love Summer Fridays. So the fact that this book was titled that, I was like, wait, that's super freaking cute. So this book follows Sawyer living in New York City in the summer of 1999. She is a corporate girly working in publishing as an assistant, and she kind of has like a horrible boss. She is also engaged, but she feels like her fiance is cheating on her with his co-worker because he's like working super long hours, and he just seems to be super distant. And he tells her it's so that he can like provide for her, and he wants to make sure that they're straight, that they're good, because of some things he's gone through with his own family, which the book gets into that. I don't want to spoil it for you, but she feels like he's cheating on her with his co-worker. Her name is Kendra. So Sawyer links up with with Kendra's boyfriend because Kendra's boyfriend also feels like Kendra is cheating on him with Sawyer's fiance. And they always link up on summer Fridays because for some corporate jobs, on summer Fridays, you get like a half day or whatever. So they start meeting on these summer Fridays in New York City, and it goes from there. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil it. But I also thought that this book was really cute because it was dated. Like it'd be like June 1st, 1999, July 3rd, 1999. One of the dates was August 13th, 1999. That's literally the day that I was born. This book also touched on 9/11 a little, which was interesting. I have not read a book that mentioned or a book surrounding the topic of 9/11, so like that was a pretty interesting perspective, and I liked how Suzanne incorporated that into this book. So yes, 5 out of 5 stars. Definitely recommend. My next book was The Stranger in a Lifeboat by Mitch Albom. I'm gonna read the little passage on the back to y'all. It says, "What would happen if we cried out to God for help and someone claiming to be God actually appeared before us?" In Mitch Albom's profound novel, a group of shipwrecked passengers must face that challenge when a stranger they pull from the water says he can save them all, but only if they believe in him. I literally read this book, y'all, in like 3 days. I had to go to DC for a work trip in December, and I brought this book with me, and this book made me cry. So getting into it, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. In this book, a billionaire decides to like create a cruise ship, and it's like a very big deal. It's supposed to be on like a 7-day voyage or whatever. The cruise ends up blowing up. The main character, Benji, he ends up on a lifeboat with some other passengers who were able to make it out, but they were the only passengers that made it out alive. So he's writing in his journal while they're literally like shipwrecked and living on this lifeboat, fighting for their life. They're running out of food and water and resources, and one day they pull this man out of the ocean, and one character was like, "Oh my gosh, thank God we found you. Like if you had been in there any longer, you probably would have died." And then that person is like, "I am the Lord." And they're all like, "What?" So I like this book because it follows the journey of them on sea, but it also follows the journey of another main character. I can't remember his name, but he is living on an island, and it follows his POV a year after the ship has, or the cruise has exploded or whatever. It brings those two perspectives together so well. As a believer, this book literally had me crying, and it made me question myself, and there were things that I had to take to the Lord, like, so I wrote down some things. I wrote that we want God to show up, but we low-key don't actually expect him to, because the shipwrecked passengers, they had been calling for God in their head, or at least, you know, like they're like, "God, please come help us." Whether they knew it or not, they had been asking for the Lord, and so the Lord shows up and he's like, "Ain't y'all been calling for me? So why I'm here? I may not look like how you thought I would look like. I may not have pulled you out of the situation, but I'm here. So why are you acting funny now? Because you asked for me and I'm here." I also wrote that people lose faith in God because they experience so much disappointment and not enough comfort in life. And that was the main character that was living on land. Like I said, I'm so sorry, y'all cannot remember his name. I'll put it on the screen, but that was his experience. He had been through so much. Both main characters, actually, the one that was in the sea shipwrecked and the one living on land, they had both experienced so much like hardship and discomfort in life to the point that they didn't believe in God. Like they didn't trust God, because they were like, if God's supposed to be good and all this, then how come only bad things have happened to me? Which is so real, and so many people experience that. I like that this book touched on that, and it did it in such a beautiful way, because at the end of the day, like, your feelings are real and they're valid, and when you're going through hard things, it can feel like, dang God, like people say you good, but my life isn't good, so how can you be good to me? One thing that really came from this book, and it's so true, is that God may not take you out of your situation, but he will be right there with you in the midst of it, and he will help you in the midst of it. He'll give you the strength, the courage, the comfort, the peace, whatever you need, he'll give it to you in the midst of the situation, so that you can triumph over your situation and you can have a testimony at the end of that. And that is literally what this book was, and it was so good and so beautiful, and I literally was crying, y'all. And I'm kind of getting a little emotional right now, but this book was so good, and I recommend this to anyone. Yeah, I will be reading more by Mitch Albom for sure. My next read was Go as a River by Shelley Reed. I don't have my book cover for this, which kind of sucks because the cover for this is really pretty. I'll put it on the screen. That's like what caught my attention. This book is based in 1948 in Colorado, following the main character, whose name is Victoria, and she lives on a peach farm. Her family has been known in her town in Colorado to like produce the best peaches around town. When the book starts, she's like 16, 17 years old, old, and by the time the book is finished, I want to say she's in like her late 40s, so it kind of follows Victoria's life through that timeline. Victoria lives in this town, and essentially the government wants to like create a river or a dam, but doing so ended up destroying her town. But she really wanted to like continue her family's legacy, so she's trying to figure out how to do that. And the whole concept of like the flood or river destroying the town really caught my attention when I picked this book up in Barnes, and like I was like, oh, that sounds really good. But in my opinion, this book kind of like rushed past all that, and the book really wasn't about that for real. It was about so much more. I gave this 2 out of 5 stars. I wrote that I wanted to like this book so badly, and in the first few pages I really did like it, because it was sort of like Victoria had met this guy and she ended up falling in love with him. So I was like, oh wait, like this is gonna have like some romance throughout the book. It don't have romance throughout the book. It was in like the first 50 or so chapters. So I wrote that I wanted to like this book so badly, but to be honest, it was boring. I felt so unsatisfied finishing the book. I remember being like, that's it? Like, that's what I read this for? I also didn't really feel connected to the main character, and so I felt like I wasn't able to like really buy into it, to buy into the story fully, because I wasn't really bought into her. Yeah, I don't know. I really wouldn't recommend this book, sorry. And my last book, I'm trying to finish this out, y'all. My last book is Imani All Mine by Connie Porter. I picked this book up from a free little library in my airport on the way back from my DC work trip, and I'm so glad that I did. The title really caught my attention because my middle name is Imani, and so I was like, oh wait, that's so sweet, love that. But this book follows a 14-year-old, her name is Tasha, living in Buffalo, New York, I think, and she is a single mother. So she's 14 years old, she has a baby. Her daughter's name is Imani. So it just follows like some of her daily struggles, which include like poverty, racism, also big trigger warning for this book of sexual assault. Surrounding Tasha and Imani is a cast of memorable characters: Peanut, the boy Tasha likes; Ebony, her best friend; Miss Odetta, the neighborhood gossip; and Tasha's mother, Erlene, who's dating a new boyfriend. Although this book deals with like very heavy topics and very heavy things, it also was very funny because you're reading it all through the perspective of a 14-year-old, and so she's just funny, and she doesn't even try to be, but she's very witty. But also it's very sad though, because some of the things that like she goes through and experiences, she can't even like really fully process it because she's 14. But since it is delivered through the perspective of Tasha, it at the same time is a little lighthearted, and I would say that this book is very hopeful. Like, it gives you hope. I think a lot about like the Bible. Like, the Bible reminds us a lot to be like little children, and so although Tasha has gone through a lot, even in her short 14 years of life, she kind of always it's like hopeful. And there is a period in the book where she doesn't know it because she's 14, but the way that she's describing what she's experiencing, it's like, okay, as a 25-year-old, I can interpret that as she's depressed. She's going through depression right now. At the same time, it's like she's still hopeful and still like looking for something, or can still find the good in small moments, and I really appreciate that about Tasha. Connie just brought this storyline together very well. I feel like I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. Before picking this book up, I didn't think that I knew who Connie Porter was, but when I was reading it, I looked her up and I found out that she actually wrote American Girl books. She wrote the Black, what was her name? Abby? I think her name was Abby. And I remember having those books as a little kid, so I was like, oh my gosh, like I just really love that. So those were all the 11 books that I read in 2024. I hope that y'all enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts are, or let me know if you plan on reading any of these books. I'm excited for 2025, y'all, and what the Lord wants to do. I want to be better about making book content and making content in general, so definitely subscribe so you can hang out with me and be along for the journey. I'll see y'all in the next video.